I kind of just sat up and I was like, wait a minute, I could solve this. Why is air travel like one of the most stressful parts of traveling? What we're doing is almost bringing a solved problem into a new industry.
So, Akku, welcome. Can you just jump right in and explain what your technology is, and just briefly, and then bring us back to where you started and got the idea?
Yeah, of course. And I really appreciate you guys having me on. This is awesome. I think you guys have a great mission. I'm really glad to be a part of it. So I think the problem that we're trying to solve is a pretty common one that a lot of people feel. It's just that airlines and airports kind of suck nowadays. Why is air travel like one of the most stressful parts of traveling? That's a question I ask myself a lot. So I travel quite a bit. I've been on over 300 flights in just the last 3 years, all 50 states, all 7 continents. And so I'm always on planes at airports. And since I was in high school, I've always wanted to start a business. And so it just kind of happened that I was looking for a problem to solve, as all good entrepreneurs do, always looking out into the world, looking for problems. And I was sitting at DFW Airport, which is just like 3 hours north of me, waiting for a plane that was delayed for 8 hours, sitting just like daydreaming. And into my 4th hour, I kind of just sat up and I was like, wait a minute, I could solve this. At the moment, I didn't necessarily know what like this was, but just something in air travel, something in the airports and the airlines. Like you mentioned, Turner, at the time I was a bachelor's in aerospace engineering, but got my bachelor's, currently doing a master's. And so definitely a lot of technical skills, but also just the passion, right, for air travel. I'm also a licensed pilot, so I love aviation. I'm obsessed with it. And that was kind of why I got started in it. And then in terms of the actual problem, I'll just touch on it briefly. We went through a lot of pivots, but what we kind of ended up on is sizing airport baggage automatically. And so right now we're working with one airport in Michigan and another airport that's soon to be announced. I won't announce it here, but it will soon to be announced, just due to some contracts that we signed. But basically we're trying to help them track, detect, and size their baggage autonomously, because right now it's done by staff. And so why not make machines do the work rather than humans?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was on y'all's website and saw the video y'all have of, it kind of looks like when someone's walking into the kind of boarding terminal, or that's not the right term, but into the pass to get onto the airplane.
Yeah, the gate.
The camera kind of scanning them. It kind of figures out the bag and measures it. And on your website, it measures it within 2 centimeters of accuracy, and then gives like a number on the side of how many spaces are left on the airplane. So assumingly, the benefit of this technology is you are making it more efficient for the airplane to know, okay, well, this is how much space we have left, which then makes it quicker for people to get on. And if someone needs to, we've all been on the airplane when everyone's trying to cram things into overhead, and someone eventually says, "Oh, well, you gotta check that bag," and then you delay it. So assumedly that's the value proposition, right? It's increasing the speed and efficiency.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, there's so many things you can do with it. And I think maybe the core of what we're trying to do is just reduce subjectivity in the boarding process, just in air travel in general, right? Maybe in this very niche way, is instead of saying the gate agent or someone, some staff says that might be too big, pull someone out of line, go use that metal baggage sizer. Now we can just do it autonomously. And like you said, that opens up the door to predicting how much space is still on the plane, whether a bag will fit the overhead bin or not. It could even be, can we assign bags to bins like we assign people to seats, right? What if your bag was guaranteed to be right above your seat? I know it's super annoying to go like 10 rows back to put your bag down and then having to swim up the plane just to get back to your seat. So there's so many things you can do with it. I think just the core of it is just trying to increase objectivity, right, with data.
For sure. So you start with this idea, sitting in the airport for 8 hours and say, I don't know what I'm going to do, but we got to fix this somehow. How did you get from that point to coming up with this idea? Because you said you had a lot of different pivots inside of that. So what was the first step that you took? And then take us through kind of those next steps of coming to where you are now.
Yeah. Yeah, great question. Because obviously it took a long time, right? It wasn't just immediately like, hey, we got it. Um, I think, the first thing that we did, so I'll just say that we started 2 years ago. We actually incorporated 2 years almost to the day from when this is being recorded. And so at the time, I really had no idea what problem to solve. And I think what I did, which I recommend everyone doing, is just going out and doing customer interviews. I'm sure a lot of people, you know about that who listen to the podcast, but if you don't, basically it's just going out to whoever you think might buy your product, whatever that product is, and just asking them questions, right? And the questions that we asked were very vague. Not vague in the sense of like we didn't want to get specific answers, but vague in the sense we didn't know what problem to solve. So we just asked them, what are your problems? Right? We've reached out to like 30 airports across the country, a number of airlines, just and we use the student card. I think the student card's always great. If you have like the at whatever.edu, use that to your full advantage. That's what we did. And we got a lot of responses and a lot of great conversations of just what problems do actual people in the industry deal with. And through that process, I wouldn't say we necessarily, immediately got the problem, but we started learning about the industry, about what actual people in the industry faced. And through that, we were able to kind of, make an educated conclusion that this is something that might be worth solving.
Yeah, definitely. And so you did how many interviews?
I think I'll have to check, but at least 80.
Okay. And was this just by yourself, or do you have someone that you were working with at that point?
Yeah, that's a whole nother conversation about co-founders and partners and stuff. But at the time, I actually had four other people, all from my school, Texas A&M. And I won't name any names, but they're not with the company anymore. They didn't really do much, I'll just say. So most of it was me doing it, but you know, it was actually super valuable in the end because I still have those connections today, right? And if someone else had done it, maybe I wouldn't have those connections. So in the long run, it wasn't so bad of a thing to do 80 conversations, which sounds like a lot, and it is a lot because it can be beneficial, right?
Sure, absolutely. Well, we'll certainly touch more on some co-founder and team dynamics in a bit, but now let's get into exactly maybe how the technology works. Maybe get a little technical because, again, seeing this video, it's really cool, but I don't fully understand how it works. So it's called EasyBoard, right?
Yeah, EasyBoard.
Okay, so explain to us how EasyBoard works.
Sure. Yeah. So, to put it simply, I think what we're doing is almost bringing a solved problem into a new industry. And the reason I call it a solved problem, and let me say almost solved problem, is because basically what we're trying to do is use cameras to detect, track, and then size, like give dimensions to length, width, and height objects. And that there's a lot of research on that. And you might imagine like, wait a minute, don't they probably do this in like Amazon and UPS and shipping companies when their packages go on those conveyor belts, right? I'm sure they have to get like the sizes and things like that to figure out the best way to allocate products. Yeah, you're right. That is what they do. And we actually looked at that for inspiration of saying, hey, what we're trying to do is not necessarily a novel technology let's say creating a whole new technology from scratch, but rather taking inspiration from another industry and applying it to one that, for whatever reason, doesn't have it yet. And I can say just the reason is because there's a lot of regulations in aviation to prevent new technologies from being created. And that, again, is a whole nother discussion. But just briefly, basically what we do is we take depth cameras. So these cameras can get both 2D and 3D images. As people walk in the boarding line, we are taking basically constant streams of data. And then we take computer vision models, AI models that we developed and that we've trained on hundreds, if not thousands of minutes of video to say that that's a bag, that's a human, that's a guitar case, that's a whatever. And then use all that data to say, okay, this thing is X by X by X feet or inches in dimensions. And that's a very simplistic way. Obviously, it's a lot more complex in the in actually how it's made, but I think that's kind of the idea there.
Yeah, absolutely. So it can actually, I'm sure, like you said, tell the difference between a bag versus a guitar. But then once it has that data, does it do anything with it? Does it tell the airport or the airline any information from there?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so that's what we, kind of talked about earlier is there's so many different use cases. I think the hard part, right, is getting that data, is sizing the bags, detecting the difference between a bag and a guitar case. But then once you get that data, you can use it in so many different ways. So that's actually what we're talking to our partners right now about, like, what do they want?
Right.
Um, Originally the idea, like the video on our website shows, is kind of like a dashboard that we'd put right in front of gate agents to say, here's how much space you have left. And then once it hits zero, then they know, like, okay, we need to start checking bags. But maybe we don't even need a dashboard. Maybe we could do more of like a trend analysis. How over a week or 2 weeks, here's how many bags generally came on board, right? And that helps airline planners, right, know how to better assess the flights and what's coming on board. Another idea, right, is selling the data to manufacturers of bags to say, here's what people are actually doing with your bags, because they have no idea, right? They just sell the bags and then they're done. Now we actually tell them, here's how people are using your bags. Here's maybe how you want to switch your design to better fit an airline's capacity, because your bag keeps getting gate checked. So there's a lot of different ways you can use the data, and we're like right at the point. If you ask me again in 2 weeks, or maybe let's say 2 months, 2 weeks to 2 months, I'd be able to tell you better, how our partners are actually using the data.
Sure. So you mentioned your partners multiple times. One of the big announcements on your everywhere for aero analytics was this Grand Rapids uh, airport that y'all are working with, and of course this new one that'll be coming out pretty soon. So explain to us how you got those partnerships, especially as maybe a student, because you can certainly pull a student card for maybe um, getting some interviews in an airport, but once you're actually proposing technology, I'm sure they do a little bit of a deeper dive. So explain
Sure.
to us how you got that partnership, and then how you're using it to decide what problem you're going to solve.
Yeah, that's a great question. So you're totally right. So our main partner right now is Gerald R. Ford International Airport, which is the main airport hub of Grand Rapids, Michigan, which is the second biggest city in Michigan. And so we've been working with them for close to a year now, and it's been great. They're great people to work with, just awesome. And the way we got that started is they actually run an incubator program, one of the only airport/aviation focused incubator programs in the world. I mean, I could name on my hand how many other ones I know, called the GRR Flight Program. And I'd actually heard about this at a conference in Grand Rapids earlier that year that we applied. So we applied in fall of 2024. I went to a conference in September of 2024 in Grand Rapids at the airport, essentially, where they had like one of their sessions was on this. And I remember thinking to myself, like, wait a minute, maybe we should just apply. Why not? Like, what's the harm? And so I went online afterwards, like this huge, like maybe 30 questions, right? To really weed out people to see if they're actually serious about it. And we were serious. We were so serious, in fact, that we spent 2 weeks making a video on our prototype. So we like just finished our prototype by the time we applied. And we spent like 2 weeks making this demo video in the library on our campus, including this was like pouring rain those entire 2 weeks. We had to carry like 50 pounds of gear from our cars, maybe a mile. But we put in the effort, made this demo video, and sent it to them. And I personally think that's what got us. They never really told us, but I think that's what kind of pushed us through is the extra effort we showed there. And honestly, once we got that, we basically did a proof of concept from January to May of 2025, showed them that, hey, the technology could work. It wasn't perfect at the moment. It's still not perfect, but that it has a lot of potential. And then in July of that year of 2025, they offered us a follow-on contract to put this into production, which is what we're working on right now.
So that follow-on was after the incubator.
Exactly. Yeah. So we kind of proved our worth, so to speak. They saw that we were ambitious, that we had a lot of energy, that we were intelligent enough to do this. And then they trusted us, right? And I think in an industry like aviation, which is very safety oriented, small, trust is everything, right? So once you build trust, a lot of doors open, but without the trust, I would say most doors will be closed to you. And so that's what kind of the most important thing is, honestly, in a lot of industries, maybe not just aviation, is building trust.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just curious because I've never even considered this. How do those meetings look? Are you sitting with is there a president of an airport, or how does the airport structure and leadership work that y'all are meeting with?
Yeah, that's a great question. I actually made an article about this recently on my Medium account about like airport stakeholders. I mean, it's actually pretty interesting. So, if all airports in the U.S. essentially, at least commercial airports, so ones with like American Airlines, Delta Airlines, so on and so forth, are public, and so a lot of the data is public. So you could search up blah 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 airport hierarchy online and then look at every single role and how it compares to each role and what the relationships are and so on and so forth. And so if you searched up Grand Rapids Airport hierarchy, you'd see that there's really only like 3 to 4 levels compared to a huge corporation, which might have hundreds of levels between the CEO and the intern, right? There's like 3 or 4 levels at an airport. There's like 100 or something people who work at the airport. That's almost nothing. And so it's very chill. It's not really cutthroat. We didn't meet directly with the CEO, but we basically met with one person under him who could say yes or no. The director of the facilities, director of the terminal, right? That's her official title. And she's a good friend of ours, right? She wants to help us. She knows our work. She worked with us during the proof of concept. We've even gotten drinks with her before. So, it's about that trust aspect, the relationship aspect. And we're in the meetings with her, with another person that we know really well, who's like the director of IT, so on and so forth. And then it's less of like a sales meeting and almost like here's what's going to happen. Everyone say yes, cool, okay, let's move forward with this. So much. I don't know. I was born in the 2000s, so I don't know how old business used to be, but I can imagine like this is how it used to be back in like the 1980s, right? When people were just like around a table talking. It honestly feels like that in a lot of ways.
Sure. So you're sitting in this room with the chief terminal, and do they have a whole bunch of regulations and a big book sitting there, or what regulations are you going to apply to y'all specifically with what y'all are doing?
Yeah, good question. When I got started, I thought regulations was going to be like the main force against us. And in some ways it is, right? We have to go through a lot of regulations. Um, for example, I'll just pull one example out of the many that we've had to deal with because I think it's particularly interesting. Is we were making a concept for our new design, which was going to be placed on the floor, but we needed like a power cord that would have to travel on the floor to our just one cord, right? And it was really thin, and we were going to put like one of those cord covers, those foam ones. And it turns out there's this ADA regulation, so for people with disabilities, that says you can't have any cords on the floor, right, within where people are going to walk. And so that shut down our entire concept that we had been working on for months, and we didn't even know. And so we had to pivot and go to something else. Um, and that's just one example, right? There's so many more. There's camera like camera angles. We can't put it. We can't capture TSA or we can't capture badge readers with our cameras, as you might imagine. Uh, Certain ways that we have to deal with engineering, right? Like when we actually put the cameras in the ceiling, we're doing like a ceiling mounted thing now. We have to get engineering approval, which makes sense because we don't want anything falling on people. Everything makes sense. It makes sense why they have all these regulations, but it can feel very frustrating, and it is very frustrating sometimes. And to your question about like whether they have a big book of regulations, fortunately they don't. That'd be very annoying if they did. It's more like us presenting an idea or us talking about an idea and then being like, this will work or not work. So it's more
Yeah,
just like an added constraint. And more regulations become apparent as we work more and more in the industry. It's not like we had to memorize all the regulations ever all at the beginning. No, like you can learn them as you go.
sure. That makes a lot of sense. One of our past guests, a company called Farm Mind or Farm Smarter as it used to be,
Yeah.
they help farmers kind of manage regulations and laws, and also kind of the uh, strategy behind what type of crop you're using and what type of pesticide and that type of thing. And their AI will kind of conglomerate all that, and so it knows all the regulation and all the uh, plant science and all of the uh, different pesticides and their interactions with each other. And you tell it, okay, I'm in middle of Wisconsin trying to grow corn. What can I do to fix this pest problem that I have?
Yeah.
And talking through this was making me curious if uh, maybe the aviation industry needs something like that, where it conglomerates that type of information. It sounds like it's not as complex in the aviation industry, which is surprising to me. Um, I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know much about farms, but I'm sure they also have a lot of regulations.
Yeah,
Um, I would say aviation is a huge field, right? Like there's one aspect of it, which is the airport side, which is what we're focused on. And then there's a whole nother aspect of it, which is like piloting and actually flying the planes. And as a pilot, I know how many regulations there are. And so on that side, yeah, for sure. I'm sure there already is something. And if there's not, having some sort of some sort of system that can like tell you what regulation you have to follow for this and that could be super helpful. Um, just on the airport side, it's a little bit more relaxed. And I wouldn't say relaxed in the sense that people aren't diligent and people aren't as safe as possible. They for sure are. It's more like the consequences aren't as bad as you flying a plane wrong. It's more like, you can be a little bit more, um, a little bit, looser as long as you kind of go through the process.
sure, absolutely. So come up with the idea. You're working with this airport to kind of be testing it. So what are kind of the next steps for y'all? I mean, I assume y'all are probably in the terminal trying to put these things together, go back and maybe fix some things and go try it, show some results to the team at the airport. How are y'all? What's the next steps to actually being a full implemented process in these airports.
Yeah, that's something I've been thinking about so much, right? Especially as 2026 rolls around. It felt like 2025 was very much like going from 0 to 1, and now 2026 is going from 1 to whatever, hopefully infinite, but probably more like 1 to 2 or 1 to 3. And you know, you're right. So basically, our next steps at Gerald R. Ford in Grand Rapids is actually putting the cameras in the ceiling. And so, unfortunately, because of the weather recently, we haven't been able to go up. We were supposed to go up actually last week. Now it's being pushed back a couple weeks, but that's going to be kind of our next immediate step. We have our full system already done. It's tested here. We have I'm in my apartment just outside here. We have like a lab set up with like a mock boarding gate where we test all our technology before we implement it. And so you don't need a lot of space at all to get started. And we're ready to go, right? Now it's just like dealing with all the other stuff that's going to prevent us. But on the other side, that's for implementing in the airport. Something a lot of other things I've been thinking about though, or how do we go to the next airport? And so I mentioned, we have another partner coming up, but then even beyond them, how do you go from 1 or 2 to 10? So that's something I've been thinking about a lot, and like I said before, in the industry, it's all about relationships. And so this year, going to like 9 conferences, I joined a bunch of exclusive aviation committees. I'm the youngest one by probably like 15 or 20 years on the next youngest. But it's just stuff you have to do, right? Depending on what industry you're in. I'm sure if you're in consumer products, you're making an app, you don't have to do any of that, but then you have to go beat your competitor. Um, so, it just depends, I guess, on the industry. And for us, it's just making more relationships and trying to get more people to say, we think that's a problem that needs to be solved.
Sure. So what's y'all's like kind of pricing model for or revenue model for this product?
Yeah. Yeah. So that's something we're still ironing out. But just in general, uh, at airports, so we're kind of acting like not kind of, we are an airport contractor.
Hmm?
And so with contracting, kind of a standard contracting form is called cost plus. And basically, what that means is that the airport will pay for the cost of all hardware and software if needed, but mainly hardware, like all the cameras, all the power cords, all that stuff that will be actually put and left in the airport. Plus, they're going to pay a fee to install it. So that's the contracting part. That's like kind of the initial revenue just to get started to fund things like travel, designing, because all work we do for each airport is custom right now.
Hmm.
As we're trying to make it more scalable.
Why
But I'm
why
sorry.
does that why does it have to be custom? I'm just curious.
Yeah, yeah, good question. So you can imagine that every airport you go to is different. Unfortunately, I mean, I wish they were all the same for my product, but it's not. You could go to one airport with ceilings that are 6 feet tall, okay, maybe 7 feet tall, but one airport has like vaulted ceilings that are 100 feet tall, right? So we can't use the same idea, which is like ceiling mounted in all the airports. We're going to have to
Gotcha.
design a new one.
That makes
Um, yeah. And so uh, I was saying, talking what we were talking about pricing model.
yes.
And then the second part of what we do, which is we more operate as a SaaS business because we have a yearly subscription fee for our software. Again, our software is like the detection, tracking, and analytics with baggage. And so because all the hardware costs are basically paid by the airport, and that's just a standard industry thing, we basically operate on SaaS margins, which I think kind of puts us in a good spot.
Yeah. So the software is the behind the scenes tracking and using the data after the hardware does the dirty work. So obviously that service fee is coming in from the airport. And then you had also mentioned earlier, like some of that data you could sell to other companies. Is that another kind of revenue stream you're going to pursue?
Yeah, that's just an idea, right?
Yeah,
Again, that's one of those things that regulations might stop.
sure.
We'd have to be very careful about it, but it's just some ideas, right? Like, I think it's always good to think about the next steps. Probably not something we're going to pursue anytime immediately. Um, but if any baggage companies listening to this podcast, we'd love to talk.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I wanna go back to um, what we were talking about earlier, kind of your team and how you've managed that. Because as an entrepreneur, of course, you have the idea in the beginning, and you uh, get to be all in on that, and then eventually there becomes a point where you're maybe less hands on with the idea and kind of more leading and managing an organization of people rather than fully just all in on the product. Not saying you're at that point yet, but how has that changed for you? How have you built your team? What was that process like?
Yeah, that's a fantastic topic that I think, honestly, now that I look back, again, we're still in the early stages, but after having gone through, well, let me count them: one, two, three, four, five. Gone through five co-founders slash coworkers. Now, now I'm working with three other people, so let's say eight people besides me who have worked on this with me. Five of them who have left for whatever reason. Um, definitely have thought a lot about this topic. And I would say if you can manage people, you can do almost anything, right? You don't have to have amazing engineering skills or anything if you can manage people. And so I would say to anyone listening, if you want to get started or you are started, like, focus on your relational and emotional intelligence and how you can manage people and work with them. But specifically in our case, so basically, like I mentioned briefly, I started the company with four other people, which I don't recommend. I would say like one or two people max getting started, especially at the beginning. It's just too difficult with five people. Um, and the problem with that is that, first of all, it was very vague. Again, like, we weren't working on a problem. It was hard to really center everyone on like one common goal. Like, let's work towards this. That's easy when you have like a really solid guiding North Star. But when you're having to pivot a lot, that's very difficult to get, especially five people. It's almost impossible. And so all those, and two of them graduated and two of them were becoming seniors, so it was just a lot. And so they all eventually left the company. But there was this other guy who, a good friend of mine for a lot of years. And I would say that's another piece of advice. Like, if you like working with someone, if you're friends with someone, if you worked with someone in the past on a project, maybe they'd be a good founder with you, co-founder. And so this guy and I, we got together. I kept needling him, like, saying, "You should join my company. You should join my company." And then eventually he kind of caved in and he joined. And so we worked for about a year together. He was kind of with me through the proof of concept, right? So that incubator program, he was in all the videos on our YouTube with the demos. That's him. And so we worked really well together, and I thought we had a great relationship. Unfortunately, he wanted to make money, and so he went to American Airlines and not eat ramen every day. So I don't blame him. And so he's still in the industry. I'm actually going to go see him tomorrow, up in Dallas. And so, we're still good friends. We still talk, but he chose a different path. And so I'll just say maybe the hardest part was after he left, was trying to find more people for very specific roles, right? Like, before that, with my co-founder, with my buddy, we were kind of just doing everything together. We were both splitting, like, we were, I forget what the term is, but like chief of everything officers or whatever.
Everything officer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so we were both kind of like playing that role. But when he left, and once we got the contract, it kind of coincided, right? It was like he left in June and then we got the contract in July and we were like about to be a real company. And it was just me. So maybe I'll just say I was about to run a real company and I needed to find people at this point. It was now I actually think about what functions do I need, which I'd never done before.
Okay.
And that was very difficult, right? Because I really had to think about like, here are my skill sets. But again, like I know I can do everything somewhat well. And maybe some things a little more than somewhat well. But as CEO, as leader, my role cannot be anymore doing the technology plus this, plus that, whatever. It has to be leading people first. And so that was really, really difficult for me as an engineer, as an ambitious type A person. Very difficult for me, but went through it, got through it, had a lot of great mentors who helped me recruit. And funnily enough, what ended up happening is two of my people were great friends that I've had for 3 years, and who I've admired and I wish I could work with one day. And I just said, hey, why not now? And another of the guys was a recommendation from one of my mentors. And so what ended up happening was I interviewed so many people from strangers to closest friends, and it ended up being, my closest friends anyway. So, I think that's always a good thing is to look in your closest circle first, because you already like the people, hopefully. And it ended up being really good, and we're still working together. I think now that it's been about 6 months, maybe 7 months now that they've all been on the team, we've gotten to a good groove, and I don't think I'd be able to run this company without them.
Yeah, absolutely. What is your obviously just kind of learning. It's for the first time. You're still figuring it out, but what have been some of your tactics to uh, keep up with your team, make sure that they feel they understand what you're expecting from them and the direction that you're trying to go?
Oh man, I've put so much thought into this topic. Read a lot of books on it. I would say my first and overriding thought with working with people is that if you recruit well, if you pick the right people and they have the right reasons for joining, then there's no such thing as like managing people. It's more like guiding people because they want to move forward, and your job becomes less of like trying to pull them forward and just saying, hey, here are the guide rails of where we need to go. And so that's why I spent so much time doing it, is because a lot of the people were just there to have it on their resume, whatever. But these people who I know, who trusted me, who I trusted, they actually wanted to work on something cool. Right. And so now most of my time is not spent giving out tasks. Right. Maybe at the beginning it was, like, I won't lie, it wasn't always just like, hey, we're clicking at full speed. No, at the beginning it definitely was. I have to make tasks for these people because they don't necessarily know exactly what we're doing yet. Okay, that's the role I had to play. Project manager, let's say.
Yep.
But as they became more and more, independent, as they understood what the project was, now it's most of my time is spent asking good questions. Most of my time when I meet with my coworkers is asking them very, very directed questions that get to the heart of what they're thinking, what they want from me, what I want from them. I feel like instead of coming with a mindset of like, I'm going to tell you what to do, it's almost like I know very little about what you know. And so I'm just going to ask you questions until we come to an agreement. And that comes a lot from the book Multipliers by Liz Wiseman. I recommend everyone reads it. I think it's great. And it's all about that idea of just asking good questions and being there as a supportive figure and getting more out of your people than trying to be like a boss. I don't want to feel like a boss. Everyone has, I don't give people paid time off. I feel like the idea should just be, you just have your life first, right? Like, take as much time off as you need to be, and you want to work because you enjoy it. So you won't take off every day of the week because you enjoy the work. You're going to come back. But if you're sick, take off. Like, I don't want you to work if you're sick because you're not going to feel good about working. And then eventually that's going to lead to problems down the road. No, take off. Like, it's all good. Everyone understands. I think it's just about having grace and being very honest and focused on the people.
Yeah, absolutely. You can only do so much if your people don't trust you, and if they do, then you can do whatever you want and you got the world at your disposal. I think that's awesome. And
Yeah.
it's striking that you're still obviously doing your master's. You graduated undergrad, but you're still in school. You still got all your aeroscience classes and these AMs and things to go through. How is that balance managing both your company and school?
Yeah. I'll be honest, I'm not taking any classes right now. I'm only doing
Okay.
research. So that's definitely a good thing.
Yep.
Um and even that, I'm almost done with my research. I'm about to defend my thesis in like a month. And so it's kind of like the final stretch for me. So it's been less and less schoolwork now. But all that being said, rewind 2 years ago when I graduated also a year early from undergrad. And so I took something like 8 classes the semester I started my company, and those are like 8 senior aerospace engineering classes, like plus my capstone, plus just a bunch of other stuff that I was doing at the time. This was spring of 2024, so this was insane, right? Like, I don't think I could do it today. Uh, it was a lot of just commitment. Um, I can, I, I think it just comes down to you can do like crazy things if you really love the things you're doing. And I really wanted everything. I really wanted to graduate in 3 years. I really wanted to start this company. I really wanted to do all the other things I was doing. And I just found a way to do it. I will say though, don't get me wrong. I think what suffered, because something always suffers, wasn't my sleep, even though you might think it was my sleep. Still got 8 hours of sleep. It wasn't, you know, mental acuity, but it was my relationships. Um, I think I was just working so hard, and just every second of my day was spent on schoolwork or my company or on this or that, that I wasn't able to make really lasting or maintain the relationship I had with um with the amount of effort that I needed to give to the people I cared about. And so that's something I look back and recall, saying like, wow, I got so much done, but I can't tell you like a great relationship that I made during that time, which I think is a failure. And to me, that's a mistake. And so that's something I've tried to work on. And I would caution everyone is like, something always, you have to sacrifice something, right? And I would make people to be like your last sacrifice, maybe second to last after your own health, and then people, and then there's a lot of other things you can sacrifice, like, I don't know, pick whatever hobby, like you'll forget about it, like watching YouTube, like you'll forget about it, but
Yeah.
but not making good friends, you'll never forget.
Yeah, that's really true. It's always interesting though, because there's kind of a duality to it that, uh, I mean, at this moment, you've gotten to where you are because of those times. And while, of course, you want to keep up those relationships, it's like, well, what would have happened if I maybe had spent more time investing in those and not on the company and the work? And of course, you can't go back and change anything, but it's always just
True.
a weird mental gymnastics of, well, what if this and what if that?
Yeah.
I think the important thing certainly is that that's something that's uh, that you're aware of and taking into account now. Uh,
Yeah.
I do really like what you said about how when you're in the moment and you have the motivation and the energy to do something, like go do it as much as you can, because that doesn't last forever. You can go on blood, sweat, and tears for only a limited amount of time until your body says, okay, that's enough of that. So, uh, and taking advantage of those years is that whatever that time frame is some good advice. So we've kind of talked about your team and obviously the technology you're doing. What are the plans for the future? Obviously, you're completing your thesis in a couple months, and will be, I assume, completed with school unless you're pursuing more education. Are you going to be able to keep running this thing?
Yeah, that's the question, right? What's going to happen in the future? And I wish I had a crystal ball. Mine's still in the mail, I guess, but I'm I really want to move forward with this. I really would love to go full time on Arrow. Um, I think that's dependent on a lot of things, which I'm a very binary type of thinker, kind of like intuitively, like thinking it has to be all or nothing. But I'm trying to change my mindset to more like a probability mindset of saying like, okay, there's like this probability, and in my opinion, with the way that that Arrow is kind of like we're getting more deals, we're in a good spot that there's like a 60 to 80% probability that I'll be able to go full time on this in some aspect. That doesn't mean like I'll be like having the best life ever. It might mean again I'm living in with four roommates eating ramen type of full time, which sometimes you have to do. Uh, I'm 22. Like I can do that if I need to. Um, and so I'll just say that my mindset has always been if you do your best today and tomorrow, then the future is going to be the best that you can make it, whether you plan for it or not. And so I'm just constantly thinking like, what can I do really well today that will just take me one step further, and then the decision will become clear. I firmly believe that one day the decision of just like, can I go full time on this or can I not go full time on this will just be decided. Maybe it's
Yeah.
like an actual physical thing of like someone giving me a $200,000 check. Hopefully that's what happens. But even if that doesn't happen, uh, it might be like a mental thing of like, okay, no matter what, I'm going for it. Because I'll just say, to be honest, I'm not at that point yet where I could just say like I would give up everything, every single part of my life to just go full time on this. I don't think I could do that yet. Like I'd go work at McDonald's nights to pay for this. Like I don't think I'm there yet. But maybe one day I will be, or maybe I won't be. And I think one day it'll just click for me, and then hey, my decision's made. So I'm not going to worry about it now necessarily.
And also, one of the beautiful things about starting something while you're in college is you have time.
Yeah.
Like you're 22, completing a master's, and have a company that's implementing things inside of multiple airports. Like whether or not you can go full time is not relevant because you have the rest of your life to get it to the point where you can. And so if you end up going to get a job and doing this nights and weekends, and then slowly it builds to the point where it can take over your job, and that's something that you want, you can turn the dials on work and Arrow and adjust it to the point that you want. It's not like you have to do this out of necessity, which is,
Yeah.
of course, a case for some entrepreneurs. And there have been plenty of successful people who have done that. But
Yeah.
I think one of the benefits of doing it young is you really can control the dials to your life.
Yeah.
So,
No, that's a great metaphor. And I think that's kind of what I said about like the probabilities,
mhm.
right? It's like those dials, right? It's not you quit your job immediately. No, you can take less hours or show up less or do less effort. And that's a great way to think about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the very last question we ask all of our guests is, what advice would you give to your freshman self, knowing what you know now. So, what would you tell yourself a couple of years ago when you're starting Arrow?
That's a great question. First, I would say get a haircut. Second, I would say don't be so in a rush. I think the sweetest things in life come with time. And I think in freshman year, I was just such in a rush to succeed and to do everything at once. I wish I had taken more time to just kind of enjoy the moment. So that would be my advice for everyone, is just like, it takes years to build a great business or to just build a great life, like just enjoy every moment that you're taking to get there. And if you can find enjoyment in what you do and who you are as a person, you'll get to wherever you want and it's going to be fun. But if you don't enjoy that, I don't know, you can achieve everything, but life's not going to be fun.
Yeah. What's the point? Awesome. Well, thank you very much for your time. This was awesome hearing about Arrow Analytics and everything that you're doing. So we'll link everything in the description if people want to go connect with you or find out more about what you're doing. But again, Akku, thank you for your time.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys. Thank you.